I know I've been out of the loop for some time and I'm still working on doing Vlogmas. Today is actually a very special day for me. Today is the anniversary of my graduation. So last year, this time, I actually graduated with my doctoral degree in psychology. So I'm a doctor of professional counseling. And this year, last time, I would have been walking across the stage. And it's such a huge accomplishment for me. And I kind of wanted to come on and to share my journey on how I got to this point. All right, so for those of you who don't know, I'm sure a lot can tell based off of my accent. I'm Jamaican, so I am 36 years old, and I've at this point in time in my life, I've spent exactly the same amount of time living in America as I have in Jamaica. So my childhood is really in Jamaica, but my adulthood is here in America. So how did I end up here? So I remember when I was maybe at the age of 2, I actually started school. I started school at the age of 2 in what we call basic school in Jamaica. In America, we'd probably call that's more like daycare. Um, and then I left there and went to what we call primary school at the age of, I want to say 6 or 7. Primary school would be the equivalent of what we call kindergarten here in America. And at that point in my time, that point in my life, that's probably where I would say most of my memories that I can recall comes from in terms of my academic journey. So I remember spending the first few years of my life living with my grandparents. We lived in a rural area, and my mom had me pretty young. So I was living with my grandparents for some time until my mom could get that financial stability for herself. And once she got it, she came back and got me, and I was living with her. So we had moved from an area in Jamaica called Cascade, that's in the parish of St. Anne, and then we migrated to Clarendon. So we migrated to Clarendon. My mom's number one objective as it relates to me was to get me into school. So she took me to a primary school, Maypen Primary. So big up to Maypen Primary. That, holds a lot of good memories for me as a child. And when she took me to this school, I was going into the 3rd grade. And I can recall this like it was yesterday, even though I'm 36 now, looking back at it. I was going into the 3rd grade and my mom took me there to be assessed, to be placed into a class. Now, the school at the time, I don't know if that's still the case. The way that they do placement for students is each grade has, I want to say it's either 6 or 12 classes each grade. So you would have something like 3-1A, 3-1B, 3-2A, 3-2B, so forth and so on. And so I recall this teacher asking me to read. And, before I even read anything, she was saying to my mom, "Mom, listen, your daughter is coming from a rural area. So we're not going to take her and put her in the highest ranked class. She's going to have to work and prove her way here." So they placed me right smack in the middle, and I was in a class 3-3A, I recall. And so I was kind of disappointed by that, because during the assessment, the teacher was saying, "No, Mom, your daughter can't go into this class and she's not on par in terms of her academic performance." And this is even before even doing any testing. That's just based off of the area in Jamaica I was coming from. So for me as a small young child, that was a blow to my self-esteem, you know. And so I was placed in this class. I spent some time in that stream. So I went to 3-3A, 4-3A, 5-3A. In 5-3A, I met a really wonderful teacher. I think her name was Mrs. Montague. I don't know if Mrs. Montague is still alive because this is many years ago. And if she is, God bless this woman's soul. She was such a lovely person. She saw potential in me that nobody else saw. And you know, she'd always encourage me. And he said, do your best, try your best. You've got it. You can do this. You know, she always encouraged me to push more, to want more, to do more. And at the end of the school year, I took a placement exam. And, you know, she was talking to the teacher for the next grade. And she said, this young lady right here, she deserves to be promoted to a higher class. As a matter of fact, I want her in the highest ranked class. The teacher at the time was like, no, we can't do that. We can promote her and she deserves to be promoted, but we're not going to put her in the highest ranked class. And so I ended up going into 6-1B, which is the second highest ranked class. That for me was a huge boost to my self-esteem, but because that was a huge promotion. Because remember, I'm coming from 3-3A, so that would have been 3-3B, you know, and so forth and so on, you know, to get to where I was placed. And so when I got there, I really worked my hardest to prove that the spot that I was in, that I was placed in, I earned it. And at the end of primary school, this is grade 6, I recall we had to take an exam. At the time, I was in the first batch of students that took the GSAT. So we were coming out of an exam that was called the Common Entrance exam. It's a school leaving or school placement exam. And when I took the exam, I remember waiting anxiously for my results. And I recall the teacher, you know, going down the list and she's calling this person's name and that person's name. And she's telling them what school they were placed in. And she gets to my name, LifewithDrGraham, Glenmere High. To put things in perspective, at the time, still even to today, Glenmere is an awesome school. So Glenmere High in Jamaica is kind of like when you're thinking about schools that's above and beyond, to kind of put things a little bit in perspective. This is in high school, but when you're thinking about schools like Harvard and Oxford and Yale in terms of university, that's kind of how we see high schools in Jamaica. So based on the high school that you go to in Jamaica, it tells where you're falling in terms of your academic performance, and the school holds a lot of weight in terms of how further you can go in terms of your academic career. So I was placed in my number 1 pick and one of the highest ranked schools within the country. This was a huge deal for me at the time. And I remember going to Glenmere and I felt so fulfilled and so accomplished, and I was so proud of myself for the hard work that I had put in finally paying off. And so high school in Jamaica starts at 7th grade. In America, it starts at 9th grade. So I started high school in Jamaica in the 7th grade. So I was there 7th, 8th, 9th, 10, 11, 12. But we don't have 11th and 12th grade. What we have what we call a 6th form. It's kind of like a junior college that preps you for university if you want to go to university. So I did 5 years, traditional 5 years of high school, and then I did 2 extra years as kind of like a college prep. So during my college prep years, the last 2 years of high school, I recall this man coming onto the campus, and he was saying, hi, I'm promoting students who want to study abroad, to take part in this trial study that I'm doing, and I can get you guys into university in America if you'd like. And so I was like talking to my parents, and I was like, you know, I really want to give this a try. I feel like this can make a big impact in my life and in my academics. And so I convinced my parents to allow me to be a part of what I think it was called 4E. They allowed me to be a part of it. It was very costly. I was going to school traditionally with the other kids, and then after school, I was staying back to study and prep for the SATs, which is that entrance exam for college in America. And I did that for some time, and I took the SATs and submitted my application for college, and I was accepted to a few schools in different states and was offered scholarships in different schools. And ultimately, what I did was I chose the school that was the best fit for me. So I ended up going to a university in Mississippi. So Mississippi was nowhere on the radar for me. I never envisioned going to school in Mississippi. But I decided, let me go ahead and pick this school. So I picked William Carey University. It was a Christian school, and that was a big thing for me that motivated me even more, because I was going to be away from home and I wanted to be in an environment that I know was going to be nurturing. So I ended up choosing this school. So I migrated to America at the age of 18, no support, completely alone, never traveled a day in my life, first time on a plane, and I'm heading to Mississippi, of all states. All right. And so I get to Mississippi, and there's a huge cultural shock, because again, at this point I'd never left home. I was very sheltered as a child, and this is my first time traveling, and here I am traveling to the big United States of America. And that was a huge adjustment. I started college with the intention to go to med school, and when I started, my major was biology, and then I ended up switching my major to nursing as kind of like a shortcut to get to med school. Coming to America, I learned very quickly that med school it's expensive everywhere, but in America, med school is ridiculously expensive. So if you don't have parents who are rich, or you don't have access to certain scholarships and they're very limited, especially as an international student, the chances of you going to med school is pretty slim. So I ended up doing nursing, which wasn't something that I was really interested in. It was just a route I was trying to take to get to another goal. And I didn't do well. I didn't do well at all. The first couple terms in nursing school, I was excelling. I was passing the course and everything, and I was going to the clinicals, and I was realizing that medicine was really not the route for me. The clinicals were really like eye-opening experiences for me as well. I remember going to med surge and just seeing the doctor open up a patient, and I'm looking at their heart, and going to the wound clinic and seeing big wounds, and it was just not something that I was prepared for. In my mind, I thought it was something that I was prepared for, but actually doing it, I realized that it wasn't a good fit for me. So long story short, close towards the ending of nursing school, I had 2 terms to be finished with my bachelor's of science in nursing. I failed out. I failed out of the program. This was my first failure ever academically. My first failure. My first big failure, that is, academically. And I remember sitting on a side stairway. I can still recall me sitting there. I remember what I was wearing and everything. And I was crying. I was so depressed. I was in a state where I couldn't imagine how I would bring myself to tell my parents after they had made all this sacrifice, that I had failed academically, and what was now the next step. So I was devastated at this point. Whether nursing was a good fit for me or not, I was absolutely devastated at this point. And so I had to gather myself in order to share this with my parents, and then to also to try to figure out what the next steps were. So after going through that experience of failing through nursing school, I remember having a conversation with a professor. This man was a psychology teacher that everyone feared. Nobody wanted to do his class. He was the hardest. And I remember taking a test with him one term, and the whole class failed. Everybody flat out failed. And I ended up getting 130% on the test. And the reason why I ended up getting that much is because the class failed and he ended up curving the grade in order for the class collectively to do better. And I stayed back, had a conversation with him, and I was explaining to him my journey thus far. And he was like, "You want to do medicine?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, if you want to do medicine, you can do medicine. Don't limit yourself. Just because you fail out of nursing school, don't let that deter you." They were just opening up a med school in Mississippi, and he really wanted me to apply. But I just never had the level of courage that I needed to pursue that, especially after having that devastating failure. So I continued to pursue psychology. It wasn't my initial choice. And the more I did it, the more I realized that it connected to me, and I realized that that was really the best fit for me in terms of my career path. And that's ultimately how I ended up in the field of psychology, and ultimately how I ended up starting my career as a therapist and now as a doctor of professional counseling. So I say that to say, a lot of times we see people and we see the end result, and we don't really know the journey that it took to get to that end result. But depending on where you are in your journey, don't give up. Don't give up. Listen to the voice that you hear inside of you that tells you this is the best fit for me and that I can do this. Listen to that voice and allow it to move you to your destiny. Because we'll have experiences in life where people will doubt your potential. People can derail you from something that's meant for you. And, you've got to kind of find your way to fight through that. So having experienced everything that I have in my academic career, looking back, I would not change a single thing, because every experience has taught me something, and every experience has made me more resilient, and every experience has empowered me to empower others, so that they can overcome those obstacles in their life. All right. So today, on my what I call graduversary, I just wanted to come on and share a little bit of my story. Thanks for watching. If you stuck with me, and I will catch you on the next one. Love, Dr. Graham.